You know what? Jay asked me if you would try to think of stories when we were children. Can you remember anything?
When you were children?
Yeah.
I remember it comes and goes. I remember once when either you or Dina were practicing on the piano on Arno Avenue. And you weren't practicing, you were looking at television or something like that. You were doing everything but practicing. And I said, practice, I gotta say, practice, practice. And we taped it. And somewhere in the house, if we could ever find that tape, you would hear me yelling at you, practice, practice.
I think one time Jay was singing the little white duck into the tape recorder, and we were laughing, and he told us to go and practice the piano.
We have that on a tape someplace, I don't know where, but it's somewhere on pieces of tape we had like that. I'm sorry I can't locate some of these things. They may be, I don't know. Someday I guess we'll find them, or maybe you'll find them. But as kids, you were very, very nice kids, all of you. And I was very lucky. I inherited a very wonderful family. I was very lucky. You kids were great. You went to school and you did your job. You were especially a very good person. I never forgot the way you used to write letters to the elderly women.
Well, that was when I was 17, 16.
Yeah, but you did that. You wrote to these elderly women as a pen pal. I don't know, in Wyoming, Montana, where all these various places. It's a very fine thing to do. And you did it. And you used to help people all the time. You were a very good kid. And I was very proud of you. I liked the way you took care of your friend in, where was she, in Pennsylvania? You remember that girl? Was she a paraplegic or something? And yet you used to visit her periodically, and it was a big trip for you. But you did it. Not every friend does that, but you did it. You were essentially a very, very good kid. I wish your children would learn something from you.
Let Grandma tell some anecdotes.
Can you know any anecdotes yourself offhand? About the kids?
What?
You know any anecdotes that you would like to tell at this time?
At the moment, I can't think of anything.
Not
about
at the moment.
I don't know. I seem to be a blank.
It's got to come. Here's what we might do, Susan. We might pick up. I have an audio recorder, and this damn thing is broken, but I have another one. And as I recall some stuff, I'll put it on audio anyhow, so you'll have something. It may not be video, but it'll be audio, and you'll have other stories there. But I had a very, very happy life with your mother and your kids. I was very, very happy.
What about, can you remember anything about Thistle Downs? That sticks in my mind.
It was a summer resort, a very, very small resort.
Bungalows.
Bungalows.
Yeah. And
I remember the lake. It was in the shape of a gun.
Something like that. It wasn't.
And everybody went out to paint the scenery of the lake. Remember you did that?
Thistle Downs was located in North Branch, Sullivan County, near Jeffersonville. I don't think we could ever find that place again.
No, it would be very difficult. They had a dirt road leading there.
But it was
and I remember going down the dirt road and you over humping the road, boom! And the car would always bang on the dirt there. I only remember one dangerous thing there, near the water. One morning I saw a huge snake, and I was scared stiff. This snake was really a big one, and he was thick as my arm, and he was quite long. He may have been about 10, 12 feet long, and a very thick snake. And I was afraid. I was terrified of snakes generally, but this one was a scary one. And he took off someplace. I don't know where he went, but I was scared.
They had a beautiful lake there.
You remember I painted that once?
Yes.
I painted a scene. My first painting, I painted a scene of the lake. There were cows on the hill on the opposite side of the lake. I painted that scene, and I was very proud of it. I thought I did a good job. And all the art critics looked at it, and he said, it's not a good painting. It's too much like a photograph. So they said it was too much like a photograph, and they didn't like it. So I never painted again. But when I look back and think, what's wrong with painting something that looks like a photograph?
Nothing.
Well, it was a nice quiet summer. and we enjoyed ourselves. I remember that Dina had a health problem there, didn't she? With that headache pepper?
I don't know if it was there.
Wasn't it there?
No.
I'm not sure.
No.
But these things blur, you know, the background blurs. When you get our age, some things you remember vividly, and some things are blurs. Why should I remember when I was a little bit of a kid? I remember the toilets in the yard. And when I was a little bit of a boy, I remember running down 5 lights. You remember it? I remember it vividly. And other things, I just don't remember at all.
Sometimes something comes up.
My brother Irving would have a better memory than I would. If you could put Irving through this, you would learn a lot about the Trotskyists and the revolution in Russia. My brother is very knowledgeable of these things.
When we were younger, teenagers like Andy, or maybe a year younger, year old, the liberal movement was very big amongst the young people, and the unions were very strong. Now they're very, very weak. And I remember marching in parades on May Day, and they had slogans, all out May Day.
Yeah.
I went to Hunter College, and a tremendous amount of students would assemble there in one contingent and join the May Day parade.
Well, you
Communist movement was very. No, I never belonged.
They had
to
the Socialists, the Young and Youth, the Socialist League.
No, I never belonged.
YCL with the Young Communist League, young people.
I belonged to an organization called War Against.
War against fascism? No, War against fascism.
War against.
Against war and fascism.
Against war and fascism. I don't know.
Youth Against War and Fascism.
That's right, yeah.
How do you know?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, well.
What is it called?
Youth Against War and Fascism.
So,
Oh, the children
a fight
of those...
against war and fascism. People say, well, what is this business of fighting against?
Fighting against war.
Well,
fighting
know,
against what?
You'd be surprised in those days, the young people, the young college people, the high school people, they were very social conscious.
Oh,
they were
City
in
College
favor of people.
and Hunter College, they were very, very
strong in favor of people. They were in favor of people. They're not like Ralph Reed and his group. These people were interested in people, help youth, help education, and they fought for it. A lot of them were thrown out of school for that. They were thrown out of college for that. But they fought for what they believed was the right thing for the people of the country. Today, unfortunately, we have greed.
Well, today, I mean, as you grow older, you tend to become more conservative anyhow. But there was a very strong liberal movement in those days. I remember they had slogans. Used to walk in a parade and say, "You'll get pie in the sky when you die." That's
a lie.
And then another group would say, "That's a lie."
You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie.
I wanted to ask you something. They made a big fuss about the Lindbergh kidnapping.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Well,
Yes.
we remember it in a general way. They never really proved that that man was guilty, but they had to get somebody because Lindbergh's kid was an important kid.
I thought he was guilty. They had enough
They
evidence.
never had and today I think there would be reasonable doubt.
Well, I don't know. I was.
You thought he was? Well, I was never sure. I was never
Well,
sure.
why did they say he kidnapped the kid? For money?
Well, some kind of all kinds of vague charges against him. He fought that battle again, to save his life. He fought very bitterly, unsuccessfully. But they have to protect Lindbergh. Now, whether or not he was guilty, we don't know. I think he had a German origin, and they felt that they got to get rid of him. They did. Maybe he was guilty. Maybe
I always had the feeling that they had enough evidence against
when you
him.
start to think of how they got the baby, it was a little peculiar. He had a ladder. He climbed up the side of a building. And it sounded kind of a little strange. But maybe he was guilty. I don't know. When the other two, the Rosenbergs, Ethel Rosenberg and her husband, were brought up on charges of giving the Russians secret information, they challenged that conviction and challenged it, and every bit of evidence that they had against Ethel Rosenberg and her husband. All of these evidence, if you ever stopped to find out what was the evidence, it was all secret. Now, only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I read an article where the Army released the papers of the Ethel Rosenberg,
Julius and Ethel Rosenberg.
Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, where they gave the secrets to the Russians. And in the stuff that the Army released, all the pertinent documents, everything that had anything, the real concrete evidence proof, is still secret. They didn't release it. Why didn't they release it? Because they don't have it. It isn't there. The Army is there are a bunch of liars there too. You know, an airplane goes down. Why does the airplane go down? They don't know why. Because we'll have an investigation. We'll have to investigate for about 4 months or 6 months or 12 months or forever. And you find nothing ever comes out of the investigation. You remember not so long ago, some Americans shot down some Iraqi planes with American people on, and Allied officers and officials and executives, and very important people, were shot down by an American plane in Iraq during the post-war episode. And so the Army investigated, and they investigated, and they investigated, and they keep on investigating it. And then they had a hearing. And they finally had one man who may have been guilty because he didn't do his job correctly. And this one man was now brought up on charges. Of all the people who may have been involved, they singled out one man. And he was just released. Not found guilty. So nobody was guilty.
I wanted to ask you about the McCarthy era.
Terrible.
Oh, that was a terrible time.
They called everybody that they didn't like a communist. McCarthy would come around. Sometimes he would go on television and he'd hold up a paper and he'd say, I have a list of all the communists in the government of the United States. Everyone, card-holding communists. Nobody ever saw the list. There was none. He used to accuse people. People lost their jobs. They could never get another job. They were blacklisted all over the country. It went into Hollywood. It went into the colleges, the professors, blacklisted. They were all blacklisted by McCarthy. And who was his lawyer again? I forget, he was a Jewish lawyer who was also turned out to be a first-class crook. But they were never able to pin any evidence on these people. And a lot of these people who were professors at City College and places like that, they lost their jobs. They were told that if you will give us names of other people, we will reinstate you. And not a single one gave them names, not one. They all lost their jobs. They all lost their ability to make a living.
When was this, about 1950?
I forget again the years, but it was a post-war episode. McCarthy was a rat of the worst type.
Where was he from? Senator from
I don't remember.
Minnesota?
I don't remember.
Do
But
you know?
incidentally,
Wisconsin.